Would you trade for Pascal Siakam? Right? That has been the trending name for a long time now. It feels like about 2 seasons. Warriors have flirted with the idea of adding Siakam. What would it take? Would you do it? Now, before we get into the trade that I will propose, let's give you some context to the situation. And we'll talk about what happened last night. I don't know how much there is to say about it, but we'll talk about it. Some big picture stuff. So the Kings are also interested in Siakam, right? Masai Ujiri. Shout out my guy that corrected me. I think I was adding the M. I was blending his first name and his last name. Masai Ujiri, notoriously one of the more difficult negotiators amongst NBA GMs. Last year, kind of got burnt with the Fred VanVleet situation, right? Everyone was like, yo, you're going to trade him? Like, you're going to trade him? He's going to walk. And they're like, and he stuck to his guns and didn't trade him. And then he walked for free. And so now the Raptors find themselves in that same situation with Pascal Siakam. Kings and Warriors both interested in Siakam, and the Kings have told them no to Keegan Murray, and the Warriors apparently have told them no to Jonathan Kuminga. Like, sorry, he's going to be a free agent. He's not going to agree to re-sign. It's a rental. And so, no, we're not coughing up our best young players. Would you trade Andrew Wiggins, Moses Moody, and GP2 for Siakam? And you say, well, would they do that? Again, and that's why I gave you the context in the beginning of the offers aren't going to be as large as he had hoped because Siakam is a pending free agent. And then you add in the fact that VanVleet had already burnt them last offseason. You imagine maybe he will give in and take a lesser deal than he wanted in order to get something instead of nothing for Siakam. But first off, I know what you're thinking. Well, why in the world would they want Wiggins the way he's looked, right? Well, you saw what RJ Barrett did for them last night, right? And it's interesting because I think it could be a very nice marketing move as well as a way to get a team to play with some extra pride. You bring in the two most celebrated Canadian players in the league right now. You've already brought in RJ. You bring in Wiggins. And Wiggins, for whatever reason, doesn't seem happy with the Warriors. He's not, I don't know. I'm tired of speculating. It is what it is. The proof's in the pudding. But maybe, just maybe, Wiggins is reinvigorated going home and he plays with more pride on a nightly basis because he's playing for his hometown team. Much like what we're seeing with RJ Barrett, which was a different scenario. I get it. Hell, they should go get Kelly Olynyk. Again, make it a Canadian thing. I think not only would it be super marketable for them, but it may give them an edge in competitive spirit. You add Moses Moody, who, by the way, what was he, like 8 of 9 shooting, 7 of 9 shooting last night, 21 points. What do you know? He found a rhythm with some minutes, right? And he fits on any roster. And then GP2, that would be tough. It's like we've already let him go once. Bring back Steph's boy, and then it's a salary thing. It's a salary thing. Now maybe they manipulate some picks or there's some other deal, but the bottom line is, would you be willing to trade for Siakam on a rental if you're not giving up Kuminga? Now, what I've heard a lot of pushback from Warrior fans is, well, Siakam's 3-point shooting. You can't play him with Draymond, the spacing on the floor. He and Kuminga both hovering around 28, 29% from three. I think the context with Siakam as a shooter is catch and shoot. It looks pretty good. And you saw him hit one last night. It's off the bounce and off of movement. You don't want him taking those. And you consider Toronto doesn't really have a true point guard. They don't have great spacing. His shot quality from 3-point range would greatly increase if he was playing with Steph and Clay and in the Warrior system. He would be getting open catch and shoot threes where I think he'd be probably more around 35%, somewhere much more acceptable, right? And then you saw the size differential between he and Kuminga last night. They list him an inch taller. He's got 20 pounds on him, and he's 7'3" wingspan. He's a big frame. He's a big guy who could play at the 5 spot. He's a bigger body. The question is, again, is it a rental? And are you willing to give that up for a rental right now? I don't have an answer, man. I don't have an answer. I think, I guess, I'd do it. I'd do it. For my proposed trade, I'd do it. It sucked to see GP2 get sent away again. But at the end of the day, this is a business, and he just hasn't been reliable physically, right? Moody gets a fresh start, and then you can't feel bad for Wiggins sending him back to Toronto, right? I think it makes sense. Again, more of the question would be, would Ujiri give in to that. He'd probably want to pick, but I think I'd do it even as a rental. You look at the Western Conference, outside of the top 3 teams, Sacramento got the lid blown off them last night. The Lakers are struggling. There's still an opportunity there. And then also you consider CP's non-guaranteed, Clay expiring. There is the possibility of retaining him if it goes well, right? I don't know how that works with the bird rights. Would we have his bird rights? Would we be able to match any other deal? I don't know. I think he might be unrestricted. Someone clarify in the comments on that one. But I think, yeah, at this point, I would do it so long as it doesn't involve Kuminga. You throw in Kuminga, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Call me a homer. You know, I know everybody falls in love with their own draft picks, but I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Not the way we look. And let's talk a little bit about last night. I think we have to stop this narrative of Steph is always a victim. It's like, oh, they're not prioritizing Steph in the offense. Like, get Steph going. If you watched last night, Steph didn't want the ball. Steph didn't want to get going, right? And Steph, look, last night, he looked like someone who was pulled in an office before the game and was told, hey, we're trading so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. Like, what do you think? And then it was like, went out and go play. Steph seemed like he was anywhere but on the court last night. And I get it. I understand there are a ton of reasons why Steph would be frustrated, would be tired, all these things. But I've said this over and over again this season, heavy the head that wears the crown. We can't always just make Steph out to be the victim. He's going to have to own some of this. And too many nights, he doesn't look interested in playing basketball. He doesn't look interested in playing basketball. And so it's interesting because you look at how ultimately this whole thing was built. It was built not just on Steph being the greatest shooter in the world, but Steph being an unselfish leader and a guy that was welcoming to all, right? And just such a nice dude really is ultimately what brought Durant there, allowed Andre to sacrifice, right? And that same quality may ultimately be the end of this. Because it's like, listen, Steph, if you don't like what's going on with this and all this, stop pouting out on the court, suck it up and play through it, or go speak up and say something about it and initiate the change that you want. And it feels like he's just kind of sulking on the court. And I know a lot of you, I'll probably hit the thumbs down. That's fine. I know it's blasphemous to say these things, but you also tune in to hear the truth. And that's the truth. Steph, either say something or toughen up and start playing with some heart. Now, that game last night, you could just write it off and say, hey, it's just a stinker. It is what it is. We just got blown off the floor. The thing that's been really troubling lately is the transition defense and the rim running on Steph. And what you're seeing teams do is put a bigger defender on him, and then they leak out rim run and catch him deep in the paint, and there's nothing he can do about it. And this isn't a new strategy, but I think what is new is how many teams around the league have the ability to do it. Have a Scotty Barnes type guy, right? Have an Aaron Gordon type guy. And so I don't have an answer to it. It's problematic. And then you consider the way we space the floor and try to have shooters in it's just tough. I don't know. It's the way the game is being played right now, the pace and the space and the transition offense and lack of defense. It feels like the requirement of athleticism to be effective in this league as a team is raising. And as you know, we're not athletic enough, even with the young guns out there. And it's tough, man. So I don't know what the counter is and the answer to some of these schematic issues, but I do know that everything starts and stops with Steph. And if he comes out with the type of attitude and energy he did last night against Toronto, you can just wrap this season up. One last bit of really interesting news. It was reported today, Bob Meyers is taking a job with the Washington Commanders. Bob Meyers is taking a job with the NFL team Washington Commanders. Now, I don't know. Like, I guess, they've been such an inept organization. You're just bringing a guy that just knows how things should be run. You just operationally wise, right? He's got to put the right people in the right places. So, hey, more power to Bob Meyers. It's an interesting move, right? But I think more importantly, what it speaks to is it wasn't about Bob spending time with his family, right? Because that was the way they tried to sell it. Like, Bob is exhausted. This dynastic run, he's gonna do a little bit of TV. He wants to spend more time. No, now he's going to DC. Like that position, nah, so that wasn't it. So I just think it's telling Bob taking this job so quickly after his departure a season ago lets you know it wasn't about more free time. It was about the toxicity that was brewing at the end of this dynasty. Let me tell you about Underdog Fantasy. Click the link in the description. Use the code Alchemy. You'll get a 100% bonus on your first deposit. And this is the new wave. This is the new wave. If you're interested in making sports picks, this is, you notice if you watch the shows that cover sports picks, it's all about picks of players' hires and lowers. Never mind what the game outcome is. I think this is where the house doesn't always win, when you can play on player stats. You see me using my words carefully here, but Underdog Fantasy, not only am I having a lot of fun playing the game, I'm having a lot of success. And so if you want to support the channel, click the link in the description and use the code Alchemy. But yeah, there's about a month to go until this trade deadline hits, and you look around the landscape of the league, you have a lot of teams that are looking for a shakeup. And I feel like we say this every trade deadline, like, oh, it's going to be a crazy trade season. This one feels like maybe it's not the amount of trades, but I think the size of the trades, of the names being moved, it feels like we're setting up for a large one when it comes to star power and trade movement. And again, Steph, maybe you feel like I'm being too harsh on him. Maybe Steph has been told something he doesn't want to hear about a teammate that's going to be out the door soon. As always, hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.